Okay, today's impactful guest is Bodhi Patil, who is a Gen Z UN recognized award-winning ocean solutionist who works at the nexus of human health and ocean health and is the founder of InnerLight and does a lot of things in addition to that hopefully we'll touch on today. So, Bodhi, thank you so much for making the time for this today. I know you're doing something really cool with upcycling and plastics there, making Caribbeaners, and we're going to want to hear about that. And let's start out with what is your moment of impact?
Yeah, I would say my moment of impact was when I was a little kid living in Indonesia and I snorkeled coral reefs for the first time with my dad and went on my dad's back, went underwater and realized how incredibly beautiful, rare, and unique these ecosystems were, and also realized how fragile they were. And this was in Gili Trawangan in Bali at the time, and I'm actually going back to Bali to do some work and come full circle with my business that I started in 8th grade. And my moment of impact was really seeing the underwater world for the first time, realizing it was amazing, realizing it needed help, and then figuring out over the course of my life, the last 23 years now, dedicating that to what ocean protection and ocean stewardship looks like.
Beautiful. Can you talk about that interconnection between ocean health and human health and how you view it?
Absolutely. The ocean is connected to us on so many levels, both mentally, physically, emotionally, chemically, in so many ways, spiritually, and so many coastal communities like the one I am now with in Zambales in the Philippines on the coast have a deep relationship with the ocean for their economy, for their primary source of protein with their fisheries, and so many other connection points, just like surfing that we just did. That's why my hair is soaking wet on this podcast. There's so many ways that we're connected with the ocean, and not only are we chemically partially salt water because our veins are run with water, and when salt water comes into our bodies, it changes our actual chemistry and our circulation and how we're connecting to different interfaces and ecologies. But the ocean is just a huge provider of oxygen, a huge provider of sustenance and livelihoods and economic benefits for billions of people. So no ocean, no climate, no life.
Yeah, I love that. And I've heard you talk about the two breaths, that one breath we inhale is from the ocean and the other breath is from the forest. And so what would you say are the main pressures on the health of the ocean right now?
The biggest threat the ocean is facing is the lack of knowledge and lack of investment in its stewardship. And that gap is more than just a threat from climate change. It's more than just a threat from a lack of ocean literacy globally. It's the very bane of our existence that's threatened when the ocean is thought of as an afterthought and something that's not a part of the main agenda. And I think the ocean needs to be the top of everyone's mind, the top of geopolitical interests and trades, and understanding how the maritime environment affects us all. And I think the lack of deep connection is one of the roots of that, because the ocean can be in many places difficult to connect with, and other places incredibly easy depending on your geography. And I think our ability to connect with, understand the ocean, and then really find ways to build a regenerative and not an extractive blue economy or a sustainable ocean economy is extremely important now, because we're hitting geological tipping points with our Earth, and climate change is exacerbating the extent to which our Earth systems that sustain us all, that provide us life, that heal us, are slowly deteriorating, declining, and eventually will be unable to support the billions of humans on this planet. So there is still hope with the ocean, and we need to make it the center point of our agenda in everything that we do.
So I want to hear your thoughts on how Gen Z and really everyone can get involved in this existential problem. And I know that you are involved with the Indigenous Wisdom Keepers delegation and involved in the UN. And next week is a big week for the UN High Seas Treaty. It's supposed to come into effect January 17th. So we're recording this shortly before that. Can you talk a little bit about, you were at COP30 in Brazil, and you're using your voice to make the ocean, raise the awareness of what's happening with the ocean warming, the acidification. And can you talk to us a little bit about what's happening with the High Seas Treaty, what's happening with the Indigenous Wisdom Keepers group, and how can people get involved and influence geopolitical policy for the good of the ocean and therefore for the good of human health?
Yeah. The High Seas Treaty and its ratification and now implementation and then enforcement, which is multiple steps and a long timeline, has not been an easy battle. It's taken hundreds of thousands of advocates from countries all around the world. It's taken really courageous leaders, organizations like the High Seas Alliance, Sustainable Ocean Alliance, and also Ocean Uprise, a youth organization that I co-founded with Parlay. And it's been an effort that has required a lot of organizations that might sometimes be competing for funds or little fish in a pool waiting for the sprinkle of food and all going for it, to really work together and to think cooperatively and to think about a much bigger battle that we have to win. And it's been really cool to see these countries and these communities and organizations, people working together to protect areas of biodiversity beyond national jurisdiction, BB&J, and these areas of the high seas that aren't technically within a country's governance. They're outside of the 200 nautical mile exclusive economic zone, so the 200 nautical mile area where the country has. The areas outside of that aren't governed by a single country, and that's most of our planet. It's 41% of our planet, most of our ocean, and the ocean covers 71% of the earth. So we're thinking about a space that's completely lawless in a sense, besides the UN Dualos, which is basically a long acronym to say like the treaty that established all these places around maritime routes and movements and countries and conflict on the high seas. And now we're actually having a treaty to protect these incredibly biodiverse, very understudied areas. And that's extremely exciting because for the first time in human history, we'll really have a way to monitor, evaluate, and then really show the value and protect these areas that are whale migration zones, that are hydrothermal vents, that are areas rich in thermal crusts that are very important for oxygen circulation and deep sea species. There's so many things we don't know. So in terms of the Indigenous knowledge piece, while I'm not Indigenous myself, I've been working with communities all around the world. And one thing that I can share from Uncle Sol, who's an elder in Maui whose house is actually burned down through the Lahaina wildfire, taught me something really, really important. And it's that the depth of the ocean is where all life emerged in Hawaiian culture. And the coral polyp actually came up from the depths of the ocean, from the deep sea, from places in the high seas on these incredibly rich benthic or seafloor environments, came up from the deep and emerged into the light, from the darkness to the light. And that was the origin of Hawaiian creation, the origin of Hawaiian mythology. And that's really powerful because so many stories across the Pacific, while not similar, have a very shared ideal around the deep sea being a sacred place. In addition, according to common law and the ocean's law, the deep sea and the high seas are the common heritage site of humankind, meaning we all have partial ownership and partial responsibility in protecting those places. So when organizations want to mine the seafloor, when organizations want to fish out the entire ocean without thinking about future generations or longevity or even basic fisheries economics, if you don't have a fish population that spawns and breeds, you can't have fish tomorrow. Think about your longevity, your health, and your family. We can't have a healthy ocean. So we've been working to combat bad things that are getting extracted from the ocean and fight for or work towards in unity for things that protect the ocean. And the High Seas Treaty is massive now that it's going to be enforced and implemented, I mean, I'm just absolutely overjoyed. But we will only see what really happens when it comes down to monitoring vessels, looking at what Global Fishing Watch is doing to track the bad actors on the high seas. Now it's real time about enforcement, and it will take all of us.
Yeah, I saw a really interesting Instagram post that you made where you talked about how Gen Z is going to save the climate, save the ocean, and is innovating novel uses of AI. And one of them was to use the geolocating to figure out who's doing illegal fishing, and to have the precise information in order to assist the enforcement. So, yeah. So, what would you say are some of the lessons that you've learned from Indigenous people that go back to this pre-colonial equilibrium with nature? What have you learned in the lessons that you carry forward that inform your work today? The wisdom of how they were able to work with nature without over extracting, maintaining the balance and the harmony, reflecting the mutual dependency we have with the ocean and with the climate and nature and biodiversity.
Yeah, I think that's an awesome question, a very interesting one. I would answer with 3 words that will be elaborated upon. One is heterogeneity, so the opposite of being homogenous, and that's really important. The second is reciprocity, and the third is ancestral forms of stewardship. So the first being heterogeneity, not all communities had this deeply divine and reciprocal relationship with nature. In many cases, communities sometimes overhunted, sometimes overfished, sometimes didn't properly manage their natural assets. So I think this notion that all Indigenous communities are all local communities, that, I mean, local and Indigenous communities are separate. Indigenous communities are ancestrally based in a place from multiple generations coming of that place in origin, where local communities might have different folks from different bloodlines and ancestries. So that's an important distinction. But within Indigenous communities, and as a non-expert, I'll just share this is from my learning with hundreds of Indigenous elders at different events and in different communities across the planet that are really culturally trusted. Not everyone had this perfect form of stewardship, and I think that's important to know. The second point is that it's reciprocity. People that did this really well in terms of living with nature, understanding how to cultivate a fish pond, how to set up a rahui in the Indo-Pacific, or a way of managing their marine protected area that's culturally sanctioned and culturally enforced, was through reciprocal relationships, through directly connecting with ancestral animals and different whales, dolphins, turtles, other beings that are your family members, having those animals and those marine species held in very high esteem, sometimes in even higher esteem than your own family members because they were your clan or your family. That was so important for many different Polynesian, Micronesian, Melanesian communities. And that's something that I'm always learning from and aspiring to be more connected with. And that definitely is an honor. It takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of respect, and sometimes you don't earn it, you don't deserve it. So you kind of roll with the punches. And again, reciprocity is not just in respecting animals and respecting nature, it's also how you use these incredibly unique plant species, incredibly unique marine invertebrates, how you understand their unique ability to provide benefits to human health, provide benefits to the growth of aquaculture or different ancient forms of mariculture, hydroponics even, fish ponds, and all those great solutions. So I think it's really interesting that that's key because it's a mutual exchange. It's not a one-way exchange. And we now take, and we almost never give. So whenever I go somewhere, I think, how am I giving? Am I a respectful guest? What does ecotourism in a regenerative way look like? Is this reciprocal? Those are the questions I ask myself, even being here in the Philippines where my parents live and work. And then the third, after heterogeneity, reciprocity, is like this really strong focus on not just respect, but an actual tangible way that you're enhancing your community. So in the Amazon, there were tons of ways that people actually used people that were deceased to enhance the fertility of the land and actually increase soil growth in their burial grounds and increase soil nitrogen phosphorus load to grow plants faster. in communities across the Pacific and French Polynesia, people use different types of fruits and vegetables and things that were grown to enhance their ocean environment, to enhance the nutrient richness for different fish species and sharks, and connecting to those incredibly important garbage men and women of the sea that sharks are. So there were so many ways that people enhance their natural environment practically, and I think that's really exciting. And I've learned so much from communities across the Pacific, especially voyaging communities like the communities that come to Tapu Tapu Atea, which is a central point of all Polynesian navigation, or the Hawaiian community that's voyaging on Hokulea across Southeast Alaska, connecting Haida and Tlingit people to Hawaiians. So there's so many examples, but what I get most excited about is really this form of let's give more than we take, and let's start to change that. And I think my generation wants to get there. Sometimes we struggle through with the trends that tend to be more one-sided, but we can change that together.
Yeah, your generation is leading the way, and I'm hoping my generation will follow. And I do want to get to InnerLight, but I want to ask you something quick about the UN SDG 14, Life Underwater, because I'm trying to explore with you, Bodhi, is how can young people, or really people of any age, use these mechanisms of international governance that exist and try to connect onto them while still doing stuff privately through organizations like Ocean Uprise and InnerLight that we're going to talk about. So can you just do a quick answer, if you will, on the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and how can young people, even school-age people, get involved in life underwater?
Amazing. Obviously, as everyone in the world hopefully knows by now, there's 17 SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, that the UN set a while back that actually, I remember my dad telling me a story. He helped with the previous goals, which were like the Millennium Development Goals before the SDGs that set the basis. So I also want to acknowledge like my parents, my ancestors. I've gotten so much knowledge. I've gotten such a head start. So I'm extremely grateful for that. I think being practical about SDG 14. So SDG 14 has a bunch of different core pillars, including protecting the ocean's health, understanding the ocean economy, boosting the ocean economy, limiting overfishing, increasing coral health, reducing coral mortality and bleaching. We've hit almost none of those goals. Protecting 30% of the ocean by 2030, we're not on track. So let's think practically, let's think realistically. How do you meet an incredibly lofty goal? You break it down and you focus hyper-local. Hyper-local action scales up regionally and eventually globally. And that's what I've really come to believe now after spending 5 years doing international advocacy, winning a few battles, helping to protect the seafloor and stop and limit deep seabed mining in the Clarion-Clipperton Zone in a very dense area of polymetallic nodules, helping to advocate for the High Seas Treaty, that it's been a huge win. When we think about it though, these things can be very intangible. They're actions of international law that aren't always abided by, as we can see by our current geopolitical state of absolute confusion and chaos. So let's think practically, what can we do in terms of actions? For SDG 14, you can think about how you connect to the ocean, whether you're inland or by the water, how you can protect waterways and all systems that flow into the ocean, how you can establish marine protected areas, how you can enforce, how you can educate. There's billions of things that you can do to protect the ocean. The question is, what is your unique lever? What is a unique thing that makes you excited or your heart beat faster? And what is the intersection of what you're good at, what the world needs doing, and what's fun for you? And I think that sweet spot is where I'm so grateful that I get to live and spend like now 99% of my time, now that I've graduated from a very intense Master's of Management program at the University of British Columbia. And yeah, going back, a super quick answer around SDG 14 would be take ocean action in your local community. The global advocacy pillars will always be there. Support the campaigns and know that what you do right at home is where it really, really counts in your community, because that's where you have the most leverage.
I love it. I love the focus on hyper-local action that brings you joy and makes you feel connected to community. Beautiful.
Yeah, it's real.
Yeah, right? Let's go to InnerLight. So I'm so excited how you talk about it. You say it's love-based, climate smart, inclusive, intergenerational, interspecies, and maybe not interspecies, but
I
so
try. Learn
so
from the whales.
and you call yourself a solutionist, which I absolutely love and admire. So talk to us about these guiding design principles, which are values and your ethos and your orientation towards solutions, and your optimism.
Yeah, 100%. In 8th grade, I had just had 3 years of middle school. I was extremely anxious. I was depressed. I was figuring out how to overcome some of the challenges that I felt in 6th grade when I moved all around the world and then ended up in Washington, D.C., just outside in Arlington, Virginia, with no friends, like no kind of core pillars of my life, no roots, because I moved around so much and I hadn't met anyone. It was the first week. And I came home crying to my mom in 6th grade, and she was like, you have to do 4x4 breathing. So I put my hand on my heart and my belly, and I did 4 deep breaths. We can do one deep one together. And I learned tools and techniques to actually create a strong body, a calm mind, and a vibrant spirit. And then I applied for National Honor Society, got a small micro grant from Jane Goodall. She gave me my first $200 that I've now turned into much over 200K, which is awesome to see that. And we turned a program that helped me feel more calm and less anxious into a program that taught my whole middle school how to really develop their inner light and their core tools: strong body, calm mind, vibrant spirit. So in 8th grade, after graduating from the Young Entrepreneurs Academy, I created a business plan and had a whole pitch deck, and I got my first $2,000 to start InnerLight. So I got it registered as an LLC and started doing courses and workshops for other schools, expanding out of the region. But the core pillars were, how do we actually get young people empowered and connected to themselves so that they can protect nature?
Mm-hmm.
So I spent the next 6 years throughout high school and then university and my master's program. I guess that's actually like 9 years, because that takes a long time through university. I've spent a lot of time in school. And after that time, I realized the ocean's health and humans' health are directly interlinked, and one can improve the other and vice versa. So I built InnerLight into an ocean and human health platform, and now it's expanded into InnerLight Foundation, which is, and this is the first podcast I'm sharing it on, so I'm really excited. This is my first ever nonprofit that I've always dreamed of starting, and it's a foundation dedicated to empowering young people discover their inner light by investing in Indigenous communities stewarding ocean and human health. And so by supporting young and Indigenous communities directly in coastal communities in areas that are ecologically rich, culturally rich, this is biocultural stewardship, I'm really, really excited to see some of the benefits, because we know they have outsized benefit, these local communities, these Indigenous people and young people that pass down knowledge across generations to protect their ocean. They have massive impact despite little investment. So we want to change that. We want to change the disparate stats that a fraction of a percentage of all philanthropy goes to Indigenous communities. I'm here to help catalyze that for young people, for people that have the greatest impact and the least amount of support. And I'm really excited to do that with InnerLight Foundation. That's my mission for this year. And it will be an incredible journey, and not an easy one, but one that I'm not going to back down from.
That is a beautiful announcement. I'm so thrilled to hear about it. How can people get involved and support the work of the foundation, the InnerLight Foundation?
Yeah, that's a great question. For everyday people that want to learn more, check us out, InnerLight.tv. For people that want to support, connect with me directly. We're always looking for increasing the pool of philanthropists, investors, people that want to champion this message. And for everyone else, follow along the journey on YouTube, on Instagram. I'll be doing 6 short documentaries with Water Bear, and then also producing a number of short episodes on a daily and then weekly basis for Instagram and YouTube, following grantees that are going to be in unique geographies across Indo-Pacific, in countries like the Philippines, Indonesia, New Zealand, Australia, and many, many more surprises like Papua New Guinea. So Please follow along. Please support. The biggest way you can help, besides any actual exchange, is put your energy into something that you believe in. Support this idea of biocultural stewardship and share these content pieces and these videos with as many people as you can, because we need to get the message out that this really matters. Billions of people need to understand, not just hundreds of thousands and millions. We can change it together.
We can change it together, and we all need to come together, and we need to come together now. On that theme, let's talk a little bit about leveraging your optimism and your solutionist orientation to the world. And let's look at problem, mitigation, solution. So I want to go to, you're a co-founder of Ocean Uprise. You're wearing the shirt of Parlay. How do you say it? Parlay
for the ocean.
Parlay and Parlay TV. So Ocean Uprise. And you're joining this podcast having completed some work with them earlier. So you want to talk a little bit about, so the problem would be pollution, plastics pollution, and the solution is the work that you're doing. Can you talk a little bit about the mitigation solution work that you're doing for the infestation of plastics? I guess I saw on the website, the Ocean Uprise website, 10 million, what's the unit of measure? 10 million tons of plastics or something? Yeah.
And more is being produced. Obviously, everyone listening knows the plastic pollution epidemic is massive. Plastics in our body, it's in our brains, it's in our balls, it's everywhere. And plastic is not something that's good for us. There's over 16,000 chemicals in your average piece of plastic that's shared, consumed, bought, and sold. So we have to do something about it. And Parlay for the Oceans is a global collaborative organization dedicated to the future of materials, to ending plastic pollution forever and redesigning new materials that can lead us to a future that's healthier for us and the ocean. And so Ocean Uprise, our youth program, trains young people to have the skills, the knowledge, and the know-how to actually go and build this future. And through ocean advocacy and ocean action and learning about everything from plastic pollution solutions to other forms of alternatives that are based in seaweed and mycelium and tree roots and so much more, we're training the next generation to actually be active participants in creating this future that Parlay has dreamed of. So we have summits, virtual talks, events, tons of awesome episodes from content with leaders from around the world that share knowledge on the deep sea, the high seas, coastal waters, and everything to do with ocean action. And we have free educational platforms. And that all being said, as resources for folks listening, I would say what's really special is that Parlay has an air strategy. It's avoiding, intercepting, and redesigning plastic, but also avoiding the most harmful effects of climate change by intercepting the bad actors and redesigning the future of materials, by outcompeting the price points of existing virgin plastics that are subsidized by the fossil fuel industry. That's a whole other beast that is another 1 hour podcast. And really focusing on how we can invest subsidized materials that are good for us. So let's just take a simple unit case, right? Like here in the Philippines or in Bali, Indonesia, or across the planet, in your hometown, there's plastic washing up in the beach, plastic going in the ocean. You've all seen the turtle and the straw. You've all understood that plastic is bad. But what are our alternatives? Well, the alternatives are bamboo, they're wood product, they're seaweed product. They're not at scale though. They're still quite niche. They're corn product that are not really biocompostable unless it's high heat, so that takes a lot of energy. So we need to get these solutions to outcompete plastics, and that takes a massive groundswell. Not just changing and going to a zero waste lifestyle and doing advocacy in your home, which matters and great if you do it. I'm saying going beyond that, understanding the systemic changes, systemic pressures, and the economic influence that we need to place on large manufacturers of plastic, which happen to be the largest producers of fossil fuels, because plastic is petrochemical, which happen to be the people that are killing your children because they're breathing in toxic air, eating toxic chemicals, and having highest rates of cancer in human history. So when I say that, it's not because I'm just like completely anti-fossil fuels and hate plastic, which I do and am. it's because it is happening, and that's a fact, as demonstrated by countless studies showing what plastic does to little babies and fetuses. So I just wanted to reinforce the message that we can design our way out of this future. We can innovate our way out of this future. That's what being a solutionist means.
Great. And you're really talking about creating substitute products that we actually prefer that also will be sustainable, so that you're not building in any kind of sense of sacrifice, right? And so what we really need to do
Yeah.
is channel innovation, channel capital flows behind materials engineering, and make it happen. Let's talk about the blue economy. Young people are struggling to find jobs. We need to invest more in the blue economy, and we need to make these types of jobs available. We need to offer the training, whether it's aquaculture or renewable forms of energy. So what would you say about what people are listening, what they should think about with the blue economy jobs?
Yeah, the blue economy already provides over 3 billion jobs to hundreds of unique places across the planet. And the blue economy is the fastest growing economy. It's a multi-trillion dollar economy, projected to be, I think, 3 trillion by 2030 and much more by 2050. It's essentially all flows in and out of the ocean. So that's everything that's shipped, which is 90% of what's in your room right now. It's crossed the ocean. It's been on a vessel traveling over the high seas. It includes all the fish product or ocean-based product that you eat. It includes medicines, vaccines, health and pharmaceutical goods, so much more. The list goes on to infinity, really. The ocean touches all of our lives in so many ways. And I think the blue economy needs the support from multinational institutions, governments, but the private sector. And I say the private sector particularly because I've learned from my dad that governments and multinational corporations like the World Bank, because he's worked for it, can't do everything. And they need allies in the corporate world. And I think that's why business leaders, and that's why I did business school, have an incredible role to play in bringing the funds, the investment, but also just the belief that investing in the ocean provides a massive quantifiable, we need help on quantifying more metrics. So all impact investors, please support ocean investment. Most importantly, the blue economy has incredible returns to humanity. And I think we need to really value economically the returns on provisions that whales contribute for circulating and cycling oxygen flows, for different types of unique marine invertebrates that have an outsized impact on the health of coastal fisheries, the phytoplankton abundance, all these things that are currently undervalued and in fact devalued completely because they're just extracted and then deemed worthless essentially, unless they're dead or completely pulled up from the seafloor, polymetallic nodules or fish, right? So we have to revalue and re-equate value to the ocean where it rightfully belongs. And that takes a lot of shifting in our economic system, but it's something that I want to understand and something that a lot of amazing folks are working on hard.
Absolutely. Very well said, well argued. So I've heard you talk a little bit about, you're kind of alluding to it, the ethos pervading international governance and really where capital concentrations are of Petro-masculinity, and that there are these other models of matriarchal line, feminine-based leadership, and it's a corollary to what you're describing, right? So do you care to comment on that, or should we go to the next thing?
You did your research.
Oh, yeah.
That's awesome.
I am so
awesome.
honored to have you on this podcast. I've been following you for years. For people, he alluded to it, but when he was in 6th grade, he came up with Bodhi's Light LLC after talking to his mother and doing the breath work together to help heal his whole entire middle school and to heal himself and to reconnect and to feel the sense of rootedness and connection. And then he won the Jane Goodall Award, and then he did the Young Entrepreneurs Academy. So you're listening to someone who at a very young age has channeled the wisdom of the ages, the wisdom of the elders, the wisdom of nature, and spirit, and is offering you with very open-hearted, love-based, cogent solutions, things you can do to get involved. So I am so honored to speak with you today. So I just think it's an interesting way to think about the current world order, especially I'll just say in the United States, we decided to kidnap the president of Venezuela because we want to pump more oil on our own dictates, and we want to control the economic rents from that supply. So we're saying we're investing and going to help out the people of Venezuela, and we're really there to extract oil resources in our own hemisphere. You look at the U.S. has just invested in every climate solution, changed all the environmental laws, making it harder for electric battery technology, just doing all the things. And so I think it's really important for people to act hyperlocal, but also keep your eye on what's happening with these huge international governments bodies, because as Bodhi said, with his father experience at the World Bank, you need both. You need to steer the big ships of international bodies in the right direction, and then you need to prove out the models and do the innovation hyper-local. And let's then scale it up with the blue economy and blue economy jobs and impact investing. So that was just a giant mouthful, so I'm going to stop talking and see what you want to say.
No, I'm honestly so grateful that you care and that you've just taken the time, but also dedicated the energy to amplifying solutions like some of the ones I have to offer and share from networks of being connected to incredible ocean legends. I want to go back to what you said at the start. You were talking about Petro-masculinity and ancestral and matriarchal lines like orcas, southern resident killer whales, and the Salish Sea. I always share that example. And so rather than sharing something that I've already said, because you clearly know some interesting things, I want to share something that might be a little bit new. I think that the origin of petro-masculinity is actually quite new. It's this feeling that people like a fossil fuel executive have when they're in power. It's the nexus of being extremely extractive and understanding that you can maximize your personal gains in a capitalist society by pulling as much out of the ground as possible, leaving as little for everyone else, and maximizing how much is burnt and sold. And I think that mixed, that extractive mindset that anyone could do, right? Man, woman, any gender identifying human being could do in a capitalist world, is really strengthened when there's this influx of negative male influence in the world that are taught to like young boys and older boys, and these things about ownership and power and greed and wealth, and seeing that exacerbated by the current state of not just the US political situation, which everyone hangs their hats on as like the biggest threat to humanity now, but in all different cultures, in all communities, right? Like, so not all communities actually, in many communities, women are sacred actually, and women are treated with the respect and care that they deserve as providers of life and purveyors of the human experience and of our species. But it's not just about respecting women in terms of being a good young man or young person. It's also about how we expect and extract from the Earth Mother, which is the greatest provider of all. And I think those relationships with extracting from other beings that are devalued, including women and including natural beings and natural assets, are directly linked. And exploring that, I think, is incredibly important, because we're not going to be able to change petromasculine extraction and the extent of climate change when we aren't looking at the fundamental roots of really pulling as much as we can from all these divine feminine beings, and in a more spiritual sense, and not to get too impractical and more spiritual, but this is important. Like, we have to respect that ancestral matriarchal lineage And there's so many species that do that. There's so many cultures that do that. I think we have to learn from what's happened in the past if we want to chart a better course forwards.
Yeah. Stay curious, people. I was raised in sort of the U.S. corporate greed is good era. We're a different generation, capitalist, and it does create a mindset of entitlement. That if you like work hard, you can extract these economic rents, but it never recognizes and who else is involved in the production of these economic rents and should be participating in the fruits of the labor. So it's really important for my generation to think about and be aware that we were trained to have extractive, entitled mindsets.
And that can change.
It can change, right? Because the quickest way to change is hang out with young people and be curious and listen to what they say and take notes. You're there to learn.
That's a good one.
You're
and
there
vice
to learn.
Versa, always. Intergenerational collaboration.
Yeah. So let's talk about the University of British Columbia. So you just completed this fantastic education, and talk to us a little bit about a lot of young people listening. They're thinking about getting higher education. Maybe they're not sure in what, and they're not sure how to make it happen. What thoughts do you have? How does this going to influence your work?
Yeah, funny story that I also definitely don't share publicly, that I'll share is before university, I took a gap year and I went out to the kingdom of Hawaii and I went to the island of Oahu, and I spent a lot of time surfing and diving and falling in love in many regards. And I was like, I don't want to go to university, mom and dad. And they just told me straight up, they're like, you have to. And I was like, I really don't want to. And they're like, you don't have a choice. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do this, but I really don't want to do this. And I think looking back, that was really silly of me. What a privileged opportunity it is to go to a higher secondary education, tertiary education institute now with a master's, and to do your postgraduate degrees. I think looking back, I also understand why young people in many cases that are entrepreneurs and innovators and people that are growing massive on TikTok and Instagram and socials, they don't want to go to school because you have to do a bunch of assignments that you clearly aren't passionate about. Teachers are asking you for things that aren't actually within your scope of what you want to pursue, that's going to make you money, that's going to bring you joy. So I completely understand. I lived that for 5 years, but I would say learning how to think and learning some of the core frameworks that underpin how our society currently functions is critical if you want to actually change how our society functions. And I think university oftentimes teaches us to, in the case of some of my UBC courses, think in a way that everyone else has had to create the current system. And it's also pushed me to completely shift how I think about the ocean economy, how I think about geography, and how I think, because I did my undergraduate in geography, and understanding epistemologies, ontologies, ways of human thought, ways of human action and practice. And university has been the greatest challenge because I obviously wanted to be in tropical places, surfing, making content, diving, connecting with communities, working on funds, which I now get to do so graciously. But it's given so much contrast and so much depth to my life, and I would never have it done differently. If you're on the fence, shoot your shot. Try it. Why not?
Great. I think that's really helpful. I just have two last areas that I would love to cover with you, sort of AI friend or foe. AI friend, I mean, I think you built the case earlier in your Instagram, how AI can leverage some, ocean conservation, ocean protection, at least catching illegal fishing, right? And then AI foe it's a huge hog of water and energy. But it's here, and you're a solutionist, you're an optimist, you're an open-hearted thinker. I'm really just wanted to hear your thoughts on AI before we go to the final question.
So interesting, incredibly nuanced. I would say I spent 6 months understanding machine learning algorithms and neural networks in many of my classes. I used AI for school like we were allowed to in many ways that were both helpful and harmful. And it's not that I'm either a friend or a foe, it's that I'm beginning to understand how to better use the technologies that exist. And I'm not just talking about ChatGPT and Lovable, but the underlying frameworks of how AI offsets and also externalizes our thinking. And I'm really learning to understand how to leverage that as a tool to actually deepen human connection and deepen the human experience. While I use AI for a number of functionalities, Canva AI, basic things like that, I don't want to depend on AI to do my thinking and create original ideas that are nuanced and deep. I want to be an original being, and that's very difficult now because people think that everything is AI generated when it's too good to be true. And while I'm not saying I can create work that's too good to be true, I want to really leverage AI, not like as a cyborg, half human, half AI, but as a really advanced co-assistant and as a really advanced tool to help me access things that I normally wouldn't think of. So, for instance, my friend, Mikey Posada, great YouTube videos on Instagram, check him out. He does amazing work explaining the underlying pillars of how AI changes our brains, who's owning the AI, what the data sovereignty looks like, the data ownership, and what actually is happening with these geopolitical conflicts in the AI arms race with Sam Altman, OpenAI, all the other, Microsoft Copilot, et cetera, So Gemini, and all the rest of the CEOs that are leading the AI arms race, the energy race. Obviously, like there's so much information around AI using so much water and chat using a water bottle per search, Like you have to understand data cooling systems and how it actually works in terms of like the amount of extraction, the amount of use of water and minerals. Just like Bitcoin mining takes an incredible amount of energy. AI does as well, and that's changing too. So I want to be an AI ally for good in a way that really understands how to enhance the human experience and not detract from it. Now, there will be majority of the world that probably disagrees with that statement, that AI can enhance the human experience, but let's see. I'm open to continuously learning, and I'm optimistically cautious about what it's already doing, especially to young minds, including my own. It's easy to outsource your brain. Don't do it.
Yeah. Don't outsource your brain. Don't outsource your judgment, your discernment, your creativity. All right. So our final question, what brings you hope?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say young people in communities like Zambales in the Philippines that are absolutely excited to go clean their beach, talk to the other young people in their school, the sixth graders giving lessons to the kindergartners about marine protected areas and turtles and surfing lessons and playing sports as a tool for good. I think seeing kids with like this fire and love in their eye for water and for community and the joy of it all in these very local places is so special. It's like the most pure form of like just community and the human experience. It's absolutely incredible. I think we've, in a lot of communities in North America, have completely lost that sense of like, you don't have your phone on you and you're not asking ChatGPT what your grocery list is. You're just existing in your day and going from your fishing vessel or your canoe or your va'a to the basketball court, and then you're collecting plastic and you're trading it in for rice and you're trading it in for biscuits and you're using that to go to school the next day, and you're doing workshops with your class on futsal and soccer to get a scholarship. And the kids here at Allen & Arau, an organization that is the first grantee of the InnerLight Foundation and my impact fund, is doing just that. And that brings me so much joy to see like that these dollars are actually changing kids' lives. And beyond that it's not about the money, it's not about the potential benefit or impact, it's just purely for the love of the ocean that they're protecting it.
That's so beautiful. That's so beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I love to talk to you all day, but you have a lot of people waiting for you and lots of projects today that you're doing in community with these grantees of the InnerLight Foundation. It's
Woo!
up
Yeah, we're
and
gonna
running
turn
with your.
plastic bottles into beams.
That's amazing. And I'll love to see a video on that. So I really, your spirit shines through in everything that you do, your fierce advocacy for good, for humanity, for nature, for water. I want to thank you so much for everything you do and all your partners and teams. And you really are making me so hopeful, because it's the young people that are showing the way, and we need to support them with our capital, with our votes, with all the resources that we have and all the energy that we have, and make an intergenerational team to save the planet. Because if you listen to Bodhi, you know it's not too late, and there's lots of things you can be doing. I think on this podcast he said there's like 1 billion things you could be doing to help the ocean. I think that's literally a quote. So and I love your website so much. I love the picture of you with the manta ray, like just
like a pink whip ray in French Polynesia.
Unbelievable. Go check out the website, the foundation, and thank you for being such an impactful leader for your generation, but really for the world. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Katie. It's such an honor to be here. And everyone, there's 1,000,000,001 things you can do, so go get them.
Go get them.